hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon.
I could forgive her. I could explain it away like I always did, but I didn't want to. She looked right at me, smiled, tilted her wine glass like she was offering a toast, and said, "You are superfluous here." That word superfluous, not outdated, not tired, not even unnecessary. Superfluous, as in you don't fit here and no one cares if you know it. Like I was taking up air I wasn't meant to breathe. Like my presence was a mistake everyone was too polite to mention. I didn't flinch, didn't ask what she meant. I just smiled because that's what I do. I smile, nod, fold into the background like a well-trained ghost. But inside something moved, not broken, just done. Done being looked through. Done pretending it didn't hurt. The family trip to the resort was my idea. I booked early, got the discount, sent the group email, offered to organize everything. No one thanked me, not once. I brought hand-knit scarves for the kids. Each one took days. I picked colors they liked, patterns I thought they'd enjoy. They tore off the paper and tossed the scarves aside. Not even a hug, just cool. And they ran to the pool. I brought a vintage travel journal for Alina. She didn't open it, just said, "Oh, thanks," in that flat voice she uses when she's already bored. She put it next to her phone charger and forgot it was there. I brought lavender soap for the guest bathrooms, wrapped in ribbon, placed it carefully on the sink. The next day it was gone, replaced by some store-brand hand wash. No one said a word. On the first night, Alina tapped her glass. "Adults, only dinner tonight." She looked around the table like she was handing out party invitations. She skipped over me. I asked Tom, "Do you need help with reservations?" He smiled but didn't meet my eyes. "You don't mind staying with the kids, do you? You're so good with them." That sentence didn't feel kind. It felt like dismissal, like you stay in your place. You're the babysitter. So I stayed. I fed them, cleaned them up, brushed tangles out of their hair. They wanted a bedtime story. I read 3. When they finally slept, I watched a yogurt spill out of the blanket. I sat there alone in silence. No one texted to check in. No one brought dessert back for me. In the morning, no one said thank you. The second night, we all ate together. I sat quietly, tried to join the conversation. I mentioned a book I had liked. Alina cut me off right away. "I read something way better," she said, and started talking. Louder. Everyone laughed. I didn't. Later, I suggested the children might enjoy the museum. "They need excitement," she said. "Not quiet time. Like quiet time was a disease. Like I was boring for even suggesting it." I got up to help clear the table. I always do. Alina smiled and said, "You don't have to fuss. We have staff for that." But she didn't lift a finger. She let me carry 5 plates by myself while she scrolled on her phone. I didn't stop until the table was clean. Tom said nothing, just sipped his wine. Didn't even ask if I needed help. He used to notice. Now he didn't see me. Throughout the meal, Alina talked over me, changed the topic when I spoke, ignored my suggestions, told the kids not to bother Grandma because she gets tired. She said it in front of me like I was a lamp. When dessert came, she leaned in. Smile, perfect voice, smooth. "This trip is really for the younger generation. Marianne, you don't need to insert yourself so much. You're kind of superfluous here." My hands were in my lap. I remember that. I kept them still. Insert yourself like I forced my way in, like I had to fight for a place in the family I built. You don't need to like I was interrupting something. And superfluous, that word stuck. That word felt final. Tom heard, didn't speak, just drank and looked away. I smiled. What else was I supposed to do? I stood, said I wasn't feeling well, and left. Back in my room, I folded my shawl. Lavender, soft, embroidered with small flowers. I laid it on the chair like it was fragile, like I was. I stood in the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and asked, how did I get here? How did I become the person they could ignore without guilt? It wasn't just this trip. It was all the other times Alina rolled her eyes when I gave advice, All the times she called my style charming in that tone that meant cheap. All the times she said, "We've got it handled," when I offered help, then handed me a grocery list. Anyway, it was the day I brought soup when they were sick and she told me not to come in. Just leave it on the porch. It was the birthday party where I set up all the decorations and she told people she did it. She took the credit and didn't even blink. It was Tom telling me she means well when she forgot my birthday, telling me to let things go, to stop making it awkward. It was being left off the family group photo, then told it was an accident. Being told I'd been added to the email thread, but never seeing my name on it. It was the time they used my money to pay for Ethan's school books, and I didn't say anything. The time they asked me to co-sign the car and then forgot to invite me to Christmas dinner. I remembered the thankless weekends I babysat, the gifts I gave that were never opened, the meals I cooked that no one complimented, the times I waited by the phone hoping for a call. You're so helpful. We always know you'll be there. You keep things simple, predictable, useful, disposable. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't write a long letter or send a dramatic text. I packed. Before dawn, I wheeled my suitcase to the front desk. My shoes were quiet on the tile. My room key was cold in my hand. "I'd like to check out," I said. The young woman at the counter blinked. "Are you sure? You're booked through the weekend." "Yes," I said. "I'm paying only for myself. I settle my bill, room, meals, nothing else. Not the clay workshop I booked for the kids. Not the spa day I arranged for Alina. Not the upgraded wine package I added for Tom. None of that was mine anymore. They'd see the bill at checkout. They'd ask questions, maybe argue, maybe blame the hotel. But they'd understand eventually. They'd understand what I paid for, what I gave, what they never saw. I stepped into the cab. I didn't look back. No calls, no texts. No one ran out to stop me. That's what happens when you disappear from a place you were never really seen in. That's how it ended. Not with shouting, not with begging, not with tears, just silence. And silence, I've learned, isn't empty. Sometimes silence is a beginning. That morning, the sun came up slow and quiet over the trees. I didn't miss the sound of their voices. I didn't miss the forced smiles. I didn't miss pretending. For the first time in years, I sat with my coffee and didn't feel like I was waiting for permission to matter. I just was. And that was enough. I woke up in my own bed the next morning, hours away from the resort. The silence of my apartment wrapped around me like a soft coat. No footsteps, no laughter, no clinking glasses, just the hum of the refrigerator and the slow, steady sound of my breath. It felt strange, not bad, just unfamiliar, like I had been dropped into someone else's life and told to live it quietly. There was no breakfast buffet, no schedule, no one knocking on the door needing something, no child crying, no adult pretending not to hear them. Just peace, the kind that doesn't feel earned, but rather left behind by accident. I sat by the window, my coffee cooling in my hand. I didn't scroll through my phone. I didn't check messages. I didn't need to. I already knew there were none. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about one trip. This wasn't even about Elena's words or Tom's silence. It was about years. Years of being the one who made everything easier. The one who gave and then apologized for needing anything in return. I remembered birthdays, not mine, theirs. Every cake I baked, every card I wrote, the way I used to sneak into craft stores on my lunch break to find the perfect wrapping paper. I remembered the time I gave Tom the money for his textbooks, quietly without telling his father, and how he never mentioned it again. I remembered when Alina lost her job and I offered to watch the kids so they could save money. She didn't say thank you. She said it'll just be until we find something else. But it turned into a year. Every time she was late picking them up, she'd say, "Sorry, traffic," without even looking up from her phone. I never told her I had rearranged my entire day. Once she dropped the kids off sick and I caught the flu. She said, "Oh, that's going around," and changed the subject. I thought about the gifts they gave me. The cheap scarf still with a tag on it from last Christmas. The candle that smelled like nothing. The birthday card signed in a rush. I remembered when I helped plan their wedding. I made the centerpieces by hand, spent weeks on them. Alina told everyone her cousin had done it. When I said something, she laughed and said, "It's just easier." I remembered when I tried to talk to Tom about it. I was careful. I said I felt a little hurt. He said I was being sensitive, that it wasn't a big deal. I remembered when I moved apartments and no one offered to help. I lifted boxes alone. I ordered a pizza and ate it sitting on the floor by myself. I remembered when I got sick and was in bed for 2 days. No one called. When I mentioned it to Alina, she said, "Oh no, you should have told us," and then changed the subject to a sale at the mall. The more I remembered, the more I felt it. Resentment. Not loud, not angry, just slow, steady like water dripping through a crack in the ceiling. I thought back to when Tom was little, how he used to draw me pictures and tuck them into my purse, how he'd hug me without being asked, how he'd tell people my mom is the best cook in the world. Now he barely looked at me. Now he told stories where I didn't exist. And Alina, from the very beginning, she'd been polite. Not warm, not cruel, just polite. Always slightly distant, like I was an employee, like she had to manage me. I remembered her saying, "You don't need to bring anything every holiday," and how I brought things anyway, and how those things were left in the kitchen untouched. Once I made a cake, 3 layers, frosted it with care. She bought a store cake and served that instead. Said it was just easier. Every single action, every little word, built up over time, and I let it. I told myself I was keeping the peace, that being silent was strength. But silence didn't make me strong. It made me disappear. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I just wanted to stop disappearing. I got up from the window and walked into the kitchen. I started writing a list, not of what they owed me, but of what I gave. I wrote down babysitting hours, school pickups, birthday parties I organized, grocery runs, trips to the doctor, money sent quietly, bills covered without a word. Holidays cooked and cleaned. The list got long. I filled 2 pages, not because I wanted to show it to them, but because I needed to see it myself, needed to understand that I wasn't imagining it. I had done all of it, and I had been thanked for none of it. And now, when I finally stepped back, when I finally said no without saying a word, I knew what would happen. They would call it dramatic. They would say I was making a scene. They would say I was being cold, but I wasn't. I was being honest. For the first time, I stood there holding that list, and I felt my heart slow down. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to defend my absence. Let them sit in the silence I left behind. Let them figure out how to fill the spaces I used to hold. I folded the list and tucked it into a drawer. Then I made another list. This one was different. It said, "Read more. Take a walk every morning. Make soup just for me. Visit the art museum. Buy the good tea. Say no more often." This list wasn't about them. This one was mine. The next day, I lit a candle in my quiet apartment. It smelled like lavender. I sat with a blanket around my shoulders and a book in my lap. I thought about how no one had called yet. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a loss. It felt like peace. By the 3rd day, the silence had settled into something comfortable. I didn't rush to check my phone anymore. I didn't feel the need to stay near it just in case they called. I knew they wouldn't, and I knew if they did, it wouldn't be to ask how I was. It would be to ask what went wrong. I hadn't answered the hotel's follow-up message. I hadn't responded to the group text from Tom asking if I was feeling better. It came 12 hours after I left. Not one call, not one knock on my door that morning. Just a message that felt more like checking a box than concern. He didn't ask why I left. He asked if I was better. Better from what? From being spoken to like a burden. From being treated like luggage. I had spent 2 days thinking about everything I'd done for them. I had listed it all, not to make them feel bad, but to stop gaslighting myself into thinking I was overreacting. Now I was thinking about what I wouldn't do anymore. I started with the automatic payments. For years, I had kept quiet about how many bills were linked to my accounts. School, lunch, money, mobile plans, backup, credit card authorizations. I went into my banking app and began unlinking, canceling, deleting. I closed the card Tom used for online orders. The emergency savings account I had allowed them to dip into during the pandemic. I removed access. No explanation, just closure. Every click felt like reclaiming something. Every cancellation was a breath I hadn't taken in years. I thought about the things they wouldn't even notice were gone. The weekly grocery list I always texted on Wednesdays. The quiet way I called the pharmacy when Alina forgot to refill her prescription. The check I sent every December for the kids' winter. Clothes labeled just in case. They would feel it eventually, not all at once, but slowly. I didn't want to hurt them, but I also didn't want to keep disappearing for them. Outside, it had started to snow. Light flakes floating in the air, quiet and slow. I watched them from the kitchen window as I brewed tea. No rush, no schedule. I thought of all the times I had been their backup plan. The second option, the one they called only when something broke or fell through. They never invited me to be part of the main event. They just expected me to hold it together from the sidelines. That wasn't love. It was convenience. I sat at the table with my tea and didn't try to explain anything to myself anymore. I had been generous, yes, but I had also enabled them. I had taught them I had no limits, and now I was teaching them something else. That afternoon I took a walk. It was cold, but not bitter. The sidewalks were damp, not icy. The sky gray, but not angry. Everything was soft, muted. I stopped at the little bookstore. On the corner, the one I hadn't visited in months, because I always said I was too busy. I spent an hour there, picked a new novel, bought it without guilt. I walked home past the grocery store. I didn't go in. I didn't buy extra snacks, just in case the kids come over. I didn't check for the brand of juice Alina liked. I bought what I wanted. One bag, just enough. Back home, I unpacked slowly. Cooked a small dinner just for me. No one else. No extra servings. No portioning leftovers into containers. Labeled with names that weren't mine. No one called. The next morning, a message arrived. It was from Alina. Hi, Marianne. Not sure what happened, but we're checking out today and the front desk said there's a balance. Can you call them? It's probably a mix-up. Thanks. No greeting, no apology, no question, just an assumption. Of course, it was a mix-up because why would I stop paying? I stared at the message, then I deleted it. Another message arrived an hour later, this time from Tom. Mom, Alina says there's an issue with the bill. Can you let us know what's going on? Still no one asked if I was okay. Still no one said, we're sorry. I didn't reply. That evening, I turned off my phone. I lit candles, watched the snow fall from the couch. I didn't think of them as a punishment. I didn't want revenge. I wanted rest. But in that rest, I found power. The power to say, this is enough. The power to not explain. The power to walk away, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, like snow piling up until a tree finally bends. They didn't notice the first flake. They would feel the weight. Eventually, the next day, a knock came at the door. I didn't answer it. I watched from the peephole. It was Tom alone. I didn't open the door. He stood there for 5 minutes, then left. No note. The knock didn't make me anxious. It made me calm. I felt the decision settle into place like a stone at the bottom of a lake. I would not explain myself. I had nothing to defend. What they thought was a surprise was something I had been building toward for years. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. The following morning, I went to my desk drawer, pulled out the paper where I'd written all I had given. Babysitting hours, money, holidays, errands. I read it again. Then I tore it up. I didn't need proof anymore. I didn't need to keep score. I knew the truth. That was enough. After that, I went to the mailbox. There was a card inside. No return address. Inside, in Tom's handwriting, were just 3 words. Please come back. No apology, no ownership, just a request. A request without understanding. I didn't cry. I placed the card in a box and put the box on the top shelf somewhere. I didn't have to see it every day. Then I made soup just for me and sat down to eat while the snow kept falling. That evening, I wrote down a new word in my journal. Enough. I said it aloud, quietly to myself. Enough. I had given enough. I had waited enough. I had heard enough. And now, finally, I was choosing something else. Peace. They didn't react right away. That surprised me. I had expected the phone to ring the day they checked out, or at least a message that sounded less like a receipt error and more like concern, but instead I got silence for a while. Then, like an engine finally sputtering awake, the messages began. We're home. Can we talk? There's a lot we need to clear up. The kids miss you. At first they came, spaced out, a few hours between each. Then it became more frequent, like they thought persistence could substitute for sincerity. But soon the tone shifted. Tom called and left a message. His voice was tense. Mom, what were you thinking? The hotel said the remaining charges were under your name. Thousands, and you just left. That wasn't fair. That wasn't okay. A second message, this time from Alina. I can't believe you left us with a full bill. You arranged everything. You were the one who added all those extras, wine, classes, upgrades, and then you just walked out and left us to pay for it. That's incredibly selfish. Selfish. After everything I had done, that was the word she chose. Tom sent another message that night. You didn't even warn us. You just pulled your card from everything. My phone plan shut off this morning. Ethan's school lunch account is frozen. What's going on with you? This isn't the mom I know, but it was just the version they never wanted to meet. The version that stopped, handing over pieces of herself like loose change. Then the family group chat buzzed to life. Tom wrote, Mom's been under a lot of stress. Let's give her space. Space. I gave them space every time I swallowed my frustration and smiled anyway. I gave them space every time I stood in the background of their photos, just outside the frame. Every time I stayed late to clean up while they laughed in the other room. Every time I said, don't worry about it. Now they wanted to act like my silence was the problem. Alina replied, we love you, Marianne. Let's put this behind us. But we need to talk about the financial damage. This wasn't just emotional financial damage. As if I hadn't spent years patching up their expenses, quietly covering overdrafts, wiring money without being asked. Now that I stopped, it was damage. The next morning, I received a voice message. It was Tom. Hey, Mom. I don't know what Alina said to upset you, but it didn't justify this. You disappearing, pulling. Your support, acting like we're the enemy. We trusted you. We relied on you. Trusted. Relied. Words that sounded noble, but really meant. We assumed you'd keep giving, no matter how little we gave back. No matter how often we ignored you. He kept talking. I stopped listening. That weekend, a box showed up at my door. Inside, a framed photo of the whole family from the resort trip. One of the few I wasn't in. Alongside it, a note in Alina's handwriting. Family means forgiveness. Let's start. Fresh. But please don't let money tear us apart. That was never the intention. I stared at the photo, at their smiles, at the empty space where I should have been. Forgiveness? Where was that forgiveness when I was left to handle everything alone? Where was that grace when I was expected to give without being seen? I placed the frame back in the box and set it by the door. Monday morning, a text arrived. This is getting ridiculous. If you had a problem, you should have talked to us. You don't just pull the plug on everything. That's immature. Immature. That's what it came to. Not a word about my feelings. Just a complaint about how I handled theirs. Tuesday, the phone rang. My sister, they called me. She said, you're shutting them out. They're worried. I waited. Are you okay? That question. Soft. Real. I am. I said for the first time in a long while. She didn't push. Just said, good. Let me know if you want to talk. I thanked her. That was it. That was enough. Wednesday, a card arrived in the mail from the kids. It had stickers, crayon hearts, a message that read, "We miss you, Grandma. Mommy says you're on a break. We hope you're happy." It made me cry, not because of the words, but because I believed them, because they didn't carry hidden meanings, because they weren't about guilt or control. They were just love. That night, I lit a candle. I took out my journal. I wrote down every sentence that had hurt. You're so helpful. You're just overthinking. It's not that big of a deal. You're part of the family. Of course you'll help. You're the strong one. And under it, I wrote the truth. Being strong doesn't mean being used. Helping doesn't mean being erased. Giving doesn't mean you don't deserve to receive. By Friday, the noise died down. No new texts, no calls, just quiet. The kind that feels like something is finally settling. I sat by the window and watched the snow start to melt. I didn't know what would happen next, but for now, they were living in the world they built without me, and I was learning to live in the one I built for myself. It was a gray morning when the letter arrived. I almost missed it, tucked between catalogs and a utility bill. A cream envelope with no return address, addressed in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it at the kitchen table, half expecting another guilt-laced message. But it wasn't from them. It was from someone I hadn't seen in years. Judith, a woman I used to tutor at the community center. In her quiet, careful script, she wrote, "You probably don't remember me, but years ago you helped me pass my high school exams when no one else believed in me. I'm now a teacher. You changed my life. Thank you." I read that letter 3 times. Then I cried because it reminded me that I had mattered, that I had helped someone and had been enough. It hadn't been a transaction. It hadn't come with resentment. It hadn't been twisted or minimized. It had just been seen. Later that afternoon, I walked to the park. The snow had melted into small patches across the grass. The sky was overcast but not heavy. A few children ran across the field in their boots. Their laughter reached me like a distant memory. I sat on a bench, coat zipped, scarf pulled high. I watched an older couple toss breadcrumbs to ducks at the pond's edge. A jogger passed with music in her ears, nodding hello. I thought about everything I had stepped away from. Not just the money, not just the hotel bill, but the silence, the dismissal, the constant bending of myself to keep the peace. I thought about how many times I had replayed their words in my head, trying to figure out if I had misunderstood, if I had been too sensitive, if I had made it up. But I hadn't. I remembered every moment clearly now. Alina's voice saying, "You don't have to fuss. We have staff for that." Tom's silence as she said I was superfluous. The shrug when I asked to be included. The photo they sent without me in it. The phone plan they assumed I'd keep paying for. The outrage when I didn't. The way they spun it as me punishing them rather than protecting myself. They had treated me exactly how I allowed them to. And now I wasn't allowing it anymore. That evening, I cooked dinner slowly just for myself. Fresh soup, warm bread, a quiet table, no distractions, no one to serve but me. It tasted better than I remembered. After I washed the dishes, I pulled out an old photo album. Not the family ones, the one from my teaching years, the community center, the programs I volunteered for. There were faces I hadn't seen in decades, children I had tutored, parents I'd helped with paperwork, letters they had written me, cards with "thank you" scribbled in crayon. I sat with those memories a long time. They didn't come with strings. They didn't come with expectation. They reminded me of who I was before I was someone's backup, before I became someone who only existed in service to others. 3 days later, a knock came at the door. I hesitated, but this time I opened it. It was Tom again. He looked different this time. Less hurried, less defensive. He held a bag of groceries. but he wasn't trying to fix anything with food. "Hi, Mom," he said. I nodded, stepped aside. He placed the bag on the counter and stood there unsure. Finally, he said, "I know I already said it, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry I waited. I had nothing to offer." Until he said what needed saying. "I let you carry too much." He said we all did. "I didn't see it until you were gone. And even then, I didn't really see you. I just saw the gap you left, the mess we had to clean up, the bills, the details you always handled." He sat down at the table, quiet. "I was mad at you for leaving us with the cost. But the truth is, we were already costing you all the time. We just didn't pay attention." I poured 2 cups of tea. He took his with both hands like he needed the warmth. "I know it won't undo anything, but I want to be better. Not just ask for better. Not just hope you come back to fix it all. I want to understand what it means to show up." I believed him, not because he said it perfectly, but because he didn't ask me to pretend it had never happened. That night, after he left, I sat in the quiet again. It didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I opened my journal and wrote a new entry. To heal is not to return. It is to root yourself in the place you chose to stand. And let that be enough. A week later, I received a note from Alina. Short, honest, not polished. "I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I want to try. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." It didn't erase what came before, but it wasn't blame. It wasn't manipulation. It was quiet. And sometimes quiet is the first step toward truth. Spring came slowly. Snow melted into soil. The trees budded. The windows stayed open longer. I planted herbs in my windowsill, read 2 new books, joined a painting class. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post about it. I just lived it. And somewhere in the middle of that quiet, I realized I was free. Not because I had walked away, but because I had stopped waiting to be welcomed back. That evening, I wrote a letter, not to send, just to write. It said, "You don't have to deserve love. Rejection is also a form of love for yourself." I folded it and placed it in my journal. Then I sat by the window, the sky turning dark outside. No guilt, no anger, just quiet and a warmth that wasn't from anyone else. It was mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone to give it to me. I had given it to.
Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon. Thanks for watching.